Yesterday we built our other H-brace at the bottom. Today we're up here at the opposite end. We're going to construct a corner assembly with 2 H-braces. We're going to put our diagonal wire on there, and then our fence will pretty much be ready for tension and wire. If you're looking to build a corner brace assembly, it'll be the same steps that we showed you to build a regular H-brace. It'll just be a mirror image on both sides. You'll still have your 10-inch pins protruding from the secondary vertical posts. Your 5-inch pins will be pre-drilled into your corner post, and your diagonal wire will be lowest at the corner post, working its way upward towards the outside secondary vertical post. All right, we completed our corner brace assembly. As you can see, it's just 2 H-braces in a mirror image. We marked our posts with our wire height as well as where we want to drill our pin. We had to trim this post for a nice snug fit. This post fit nicely in place. We ran our brace wire diagonally from the bottom of the corner up to our brace pins on the outside of the secondary vertical post, and this was done in a double figure 8. We used our crimp sleeves to install our strainers and then tightened everything up and got it to tension. This will make for a nice sturdy corner assembly, and as you can see, we continue to follow the topography of the ground. With our corners done, we're going to pay out our wire and get ready to install our 6 strands of wire. Before we get started with our wire, we're going to mark all of our line posts using our cheat stick that we used earlier. This has all of our wire indicator marks on it. We're just going to mark each one as we go. As you pay out your wire, you'll be on the inside face of your line posts. When you approach a bend or a corner where your H-braces are, you'll want to direct that wire then to the outside. So coming down the inside face of your line post, when you reach your first H-brace, you'll direct that wire to the outside of your secondary vertical post. As you move to the corner post, you'll still be directing around the outside, continuing to the outside of your other H-brace assembly with this secondary vertical post. From here, you'll bump that wire back to the inside for your first line post in the run. We're going to go ahead and use our cheat stick to mark the wire heights on our secondary vertical post of our H-brace. And we're going to do this on the back side of the H-brace since the wire will be traveling around the back side before it kicks to the front for our line post. We'll go ahead and pay out the wire around the outside of our corner brace assembly, around the outside of the whole thing until we pass this vertical post, and we'll come back to the inside. Now we're going to pay out the wire as we walk down our line until we get to our other end post where we will do our termination. So we walked our wire down here to our other end. We're going to wrap this around the post and terminate it with a crimp sleeve. This is going to be our lowest strand, and it's not electrified, so no insulators are going to be needed here. Once we terminate this end, we'll staple it at height on the post, and then we'll be ready to walk out our next wire. Put our slight bend in our end. Good. Our lower end is terminated. We're going to head to the upper end and terminate up there. Before we do so, we want to make sure we count our line posts and our H-brace posts as we go so that we slide the appropriate number of insulators on before we terminate. We're up here at the spinning jenny end where we started paying out our wire. We're ready to terminate at this end as well. We have the wire through the proper pattern on our posts. We're going to cut it with just enough tail to wrap around and put a crimp sleeve on. We don't need to worry about pulling tension at this point. We'll take care of that when we do strainers. When you cut this, it's a good idea to have somebody holding each side so it doesn't pop up for safety reasons, but also so it doesn't loosen as it gets freed from the spinning jenny. We just paid out our next strand of wire. We're getting ready to terminate it. This strand's going to be electrified, so we're going to use a wraparound insulator at this termination post. That's going to keep it insulated from the post. Wraparound insulators feature these aluminum strips to prevent the wire from pulling through the plastic once they're tensioned up against the post. All of our other strands from here up are also going to include a wraparound insulator just to give us the option to electrify any strand down the road. This will keep us flexible and adaptive to any kind of species that we're grazing in this pasture. When you're stapling wraparound insulators, you don't want to straddle them. Instead, you want to put one above and one below horizontally, get the staples started, and then bend them towards each other over top of the wraparound. When doing a termination around a 6 to 7 inch diameter post, you'll want to make sure to use a 24-inch wraparound insulator. This will ensure that the wire is fully insulated as it does a complete U around the post. You'll want to do the same procedure with a wraparound insulator at your other end when you terminate. Now that we're terminated at this end, we'll make our way back up the hill, counting our line posts and our brace wires as we go, because we're going to go to the spinning jenny, cut that end, and we'll want to slide on the appropriate number of insulators before we terminate it in the same fashion at the other end. We're ready to cut our wire at the spinning jenny and do this termination, and as we mentioned, at this point we want to make sure we slide on all the insulators and crimp sleeves we'll need. So this is our sequence starting down at the lower end. We're going to be using a tube insulator to cover our diagonal brace wire, and we'll crimp it in place at both ends. You can also use split bolts to do this if you would choose. Then we have enough tube insulators to cover all of our vertical H-bracing and our line posts, which brings us to this upper corner. And again, we'll have a tube insulator covering our diagonal brace wire, crimped in place. And then we'll be using a 20-inch wraparound insulator to do our 90-degree bend. This insulator will protect against our diagonal brace wire right underneath me here, crimped in place. And then a crimp sleeve so that we can terminate with our 24-inch wraparound. We're going to continue on and pay out our other 4 strands of wire. We're going to do it in the same manner as these 2 electrified strands will receive the tube insulators. We are going to put wraparounds on everything just in case we choose to electrify a different strand down the road, but that's what we're up to next. We're going to pay out our other 4 wires. Now that we have our insulators slid onto our wire, we're going to walk them down the fence line and leave them at every line post so that we know we have an insulator for every post, and that'll get them on both sides of where we're going to cut for our strainers. Before we add any tension to our wires with strainers, we want to go ahead and get our wraparound insulators somewhat in place. Right now you can kind of see that they're just floppy and jumping over each other. So we're going to use our staples to keep them in place. We're going to keep the staples loose so that we can adjust after tension, but we're just going to clean up our corner here before we start adding strainers to the mix. In the same fashion that we did before, we're going to put a staple on top and a staple on bottom in a horizontal fashion to kind of sandwich the wraparound insulator in between. You can see we kept it loose. We still have pass-through. That'll allow us to fine-tune it and snug it up after tension's on the fence. We can come back to these staples later, and we're going to go ahead and do the same for each line down the post. In the next video, we'll show you how to tension and staple each wire.